John Burton, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Do you remember we met? You do remember back at the Church History Museum, like, what was that, like 10 years ago?
A long time ago, yes. And you know what? I'm not kidding. I think about you probably weekly.
Why is that?
Because you talked about my gouache at that time.
Oh, yeah?
Gouache painting, and it's on my mind constantly. And
I want one of it so bad. I want one so bad.
And it was right at a transition where I was going into far more digital work. So I was in the film business, and I was painting less. And I was like, it was on my mind. Truly, you would pop up in my head. I'd see your artwork paintings online. I was like, I got to get back to Jeff on one of these gouaches one of these days. So I will. I still need to. I am painting a lot more gouache these days. So
are you really?
We'll still do that.
Yeah, I would love to buy one from you.
Yeah.
I noticed the PDF you sent me was all gouache.
I did that only because of you. I didn't send any oil because I know you had talked about my gouache. So I also sent some digital as well.
I love your oil just as much. I can't afford your oil though. That's the problem. Like I probably can't afford your gouache, but
I can't afford your oil. That's the person I can't
Isn't
afford.
that funny? We can't none of us can afford our own work, much less anyone else's, you know?
Exactly. And I'm a huge fan of your work, Jeff. I think your work is just beautiful.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
You might not know, but I studied figurative actually in school. I didn't become a landscape painter until out of school. And so just have such an appreciation when someone's doing it right. And your sensitivity, your brushwork is so gorgeous. So
thanks. That means a lot. Seriously. Wow. And I didn't know that you studied figurative painting.
Yeah, I still love painting figure. I still love painting portrait. The change for me was I was so sick of showing up to the studio and a model would show up late or leave early.
Oh, dude, I know.
Or like had a headache. And I was like, and I feel for them, the difficulty, but I was like, okay, wait, mountains are never late. The ocean never gets a headache. Like I go out, I'm ready to paint at 7 a.m. or whatever time I am, and it's still happening. So that was my big transition. Was I just wanted that consistency when I wanted to paint from life.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you know what the other thing is? You probably experience this as well. Is when you're painting a mountain, you don't have to feel bad about how the mountain's feeling.
Yeah, or if you don't paint what features they like about themselves.
Exactly.
I remember
they're not going to complain,
right? I remember in art school, like you'd feel bad, like if they had features, because you probably feel the same way. Like when you look at a person, have this massive love for whatever they look like, right?
Wrinkles and all. Yeah.
Yeah. Wrinkles, age, size. Like there's this certain look that I think society, media, everything says is beautiful. And then you go to art school and you start studying models and you have this kind of love for all looks. Like there is beauty in all of it, but you might find beauty and they might hate, right? They might just their ears or their nose or any part of their body. And you're looking at it like, oh, that's so amazing. That's great lines. That's great design.
I know. Yeah. I did a commission some years ago and the woman was probably, I don't know, maybe 80. And the whole time she kept on joking. I put that in quotes because I knew she meant it. But she kept joking about how I was making her neck too waddly, you know? And I felt so bad. Eventually I just softened it up. But to me, it ruined the painting. To her, it was like, oh, that's so much better. I'm like, well, I kind of liked it better with the folds and everything. It was much more interesting to me. Yeah. But there's also that whole idea where it just like, well, because I do multi-figure painting,
right?
Sometimes they're in really uncomfortable positions. So I got it. That was the hardest part for me, was just being like, are you okay? The whole time you're trying to paint and focus on the painting. And you know, the model's totally uncomfortable. And I'm just like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? So
I felt that.
That's a tough part.
It's hard to get in the moment sometimes because of that. No, I'm pushing you to your limits. And then they get out of, if they're posing whatever, 20 minutes, and they get out of it and their back is hurting and you could tell they're hurting.
It's tough.
Totally.
It's tough. Yeah. I'm working with photography more now, and it obviously simplifies it significantly, but it's not the same.
A big part of that is you can't do that unless you put all those years of life in, right? Because you still,
it made a huge difference.
You know what I mean? If you go from nothing to photography, it's going to miss that step. It's not going to look alive. But even
Yeah.
with photography, I mean, I can tell in some of yours, like especially when you're working with kids, there has to be photography involved in
Yeah.
some of the poses. But it looks like decades of life painting to understand the temperature variations in skin and things like that.
You know what? I just finished my first multi-figure painting that isn't from life. Well, let me rephrase that. I just finished my first multi-figure painting since working from photography. Before
Okay.
that, it had been 14 years, and all of them were done from life. And I
Wow.
was really nervous that the 14 years wouldn't pay off. You know
Right.
what I mean? Because I know what you're saying, and I believe what you're saying, but now was the time to put it to the test. And
Right.
it was the first time painting one that was 11 figures. It's sitting right next to me. I just finished
I'd
it.
love to see it.
You can't. It's too
Yeah,
glary
yeah.
and weird. I'll send you as
Okay.
soon as I get a good picture of it.
Yeah, I'd love to
But
see it.
oh my gosh, it paid off. I mean, I still have a long way to go, but I'm like, dang, I couldn't have done that from photography 14 years ago. There's no freaking way.
I think it's
So it paid
actually
off.
more from a landscape from photography than it is from figure because when you work with a figure, all the subtles and temperature just gets so lost in a photograph, right? It
Yeah.
is so hard to see that.
Yeah. So, all right, we got to get more into this topic because this is a really important topic, but I don't want to skip over
Okay.
your whole life. Like, I want to know how you became an artist, where you're from, what your childhood was like,
Okay.
and so on.
Just I'll go over that quick, but I think that I was always probably born to be an artist.
Hmm.
I watch your podcast. I remember one time you mentioning in one of them, I can't remember who it was with, and just saying how you can't live without. You need to create every
Yeah.
day. You said something to that effect, and it really resonated with me. Like since I was little, I needed to create. I don't know what it was in me, but I had that need. Then life circumstances had an effect on me, which was I broke my back when I was a kid,
Whoa,
and
how'd you do that?
yeah, fell off a neighbor's trampoline back when before trampoline had
Ooh.
things around it. Here's my warning to all parents: make sure you have that thing around your
You
trampoline.
just bounced right off of it onto the ground?
Onto my head, yeah.
Onto your head?
So yeah,
Oh.
so yeah, so anyways, had a fracture, I fractured my vertebrae. So I was in bed for, so silly. I'm in sixth grade. So I played tackle football the next day. I had no idea I broke my back. When you're a kid, you're just bouncing around and playing tackle football with my friends. End of the day, my ribs are killing me. And I'm like, oh my, telling my parents, like, I think I broke my ribs playing football. Like I had no idea I'd broken my back. And they took me to the doctor and they said, no, it's the nerves that were coming off my spine. They've been, pinched. And so it was creating pain in my ribs. And so I was laid up for 4 months or so in sixth grade when I love playing sports. I love being out super active. And all of a sudden I was from super active to zero.
Yeah.
And folks were great. I lived at a perfect time period. I'm sorry for everyone living right now, but I didn't have any video games. I didn't have any, there was no Netflix. So anyway, we didn't have film we didn't have any screens to get on during the day. So I was bored to death. So it kept bringing me art and just created every day. And I think that was a big step. That wasn't everything, but something I talk about a lot because in time, we can go through a difficult circumstance and it can progress us, or we can go backwards with it, or we can stay the same. And I think
Hmm.
because I took a terrible, thanks to my parents, a bad circumstance and moved forward, it was a real blessing in my life. And then later, I was still just as athletic and loved getting out with my friends. But then I'd ask them over to come draw and paint with me, and they'd be bored to death, right? Like, hey, let's just have a painting or drawing day. Maybe you had the same. You have friends over, but it takes a lot of patience, right?
Yeah. You have to be really
So
into it.
exactly. Anyway, so fast forward, was into art, but into many other things. Eventually went to art school. And in art school, just felt like I went to the academy in San Francisco and really felt like, man, I had landed in my utopia. I just couldn't
So
believe
what
that.
I always ask this, but I'm just curious because of my own experience. What did your parents think of you going to art school to become an artist?
Oh, actually, it's a great story.
Okay.
I can be asking you this too, Jeff. We need to do a reverse because I would like to know just as much about you.
Well,
So,
there's a podcast where I talk all about this on the, so you have to just scroll back.
all
There's
right,
one.
I'll
Yeah.
scroll back on that one. Yeah. So my parents were fantastic. My parents, since I was a little kid, always said, do whatever you would love. You'll figure out a way to make a living at it. Just always do what you love. Do what you love. You'll be able to do it.
Really?
Yeah, since I was a little kid. Then I was ready to go off to college, and my sister's an attorney. My brother has his MBA, and my parents were like,
Are they
"Wait, wait,
older siblings? They're older
yeah,
siblings?
my older siblings, yeah." And so I was next in line, and they're like, "Wait a minute, we met. Be anything you want from these five choices: doctor, lawyer, right?"
Yeah.
Like there was definitely some fine print that I hadn't read, and so I think then it was too late. Like they didn't say it exactly like that, but then they had some concern, and
Hmm.
uh, instead they'd instilled it in me so much. It was like, no, this is the path I want to go, and I went on it, and eventually I came out being a graphic designer and did a lot of design for restaurants and like Apple Computer and Hewlett Packard and a lot of Silicon Valley stuff. I live in California, and eventually saw some film and wanted to get back and wanted to get into the movies. So
Hmm.
saw the Academy had a great program for film and all art in film. I didn't want to be I would love to be a filmmaker, but not a filmmaker, but more a concept artist, production designer. It wasn't really a term I knew at the time, but I just wanted to get into whatever that was. And at school, they forced me to take an oil painting class. And I thought, wow, I really want to do this, choice A, but I think I was born to do choice B,
Which is
which
painting?
was painting. Yeah. So
Really?
then I followed the path of oil painting. And
Was that a scary transition?
not really, because it was early in my career in school. So I took a class, and when I took that class, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm in art school. Let's run with this.
Well,
So
yeah, but
finish.
the other
Oh,
plan provides a potential for a job, right? A career, so to speak. And
I
whereas painting, it's like, okay, now I got to figure out how to run my own business and sell my own work. And
So true. And I'm sure you had the same, but I feel like it was only me, right? I'm not providing for a family.
mm,
And if I'm not going to chase it now, when am I going to chase it? Right.
right.
And as soon as I went to art school, I think all rationale goes out the window anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Like as soon as I go to art school, I'm like, no, this is my path. I'm going to try my best at doing this. And if not, then I'll follow other course of action. But I'm not, once I made that leap to go to art school, then you're already kind of saying, no, I'm not taking any safe path. Anyway, so that was a fine artist and painted in oils. A side note, it's so funny. This might be interesting to you or other people. When it's your own life, I'm already getting bored. I so quickly, I'd
Not
rather be
bored in the slightest. Yeah, of
okay.
course.
I'd rather be talking to you about this, Jeff, about like your
No.
side. That's just how I work. Is like
Yeah.
I love learning more than talking about myself. But I'll finish it up
Too
real quick.
bad. It's about you
Yeah.
today.
All right. Yeah. I think it's the Me Show. Welcome to the Me Show, everybody. So I took a trip to South America. So I was painting in oils. I did do some gouache, and I took a trip to South America. And few interesting things have happened in my life. Went to South America, and I had painted for all my galleries, all my shows. I was like 3 months ahead, and I was thinking about like a Paul Gauguin going to Tahiti, and like, okay, I'm gonna move there. And when I'm there, I don't want any obligations. I was trying to reinvent myself.
About how
Uh,
old were you at this point?
40, probably.
Oh, so
Reinvent
this
myself
is a
in
ways into your career.
yeah. I was reinventing myself not as a life, but reinventing my art. That's
Right.
should be clarified. Maybe you do the same. I'm trying to always find what that next piece is. I don't. I don't know if you've seen it. I have a TED Talk, and my TED Talk is The Courage to be Creative. And in the TED Talk, I start with a quote that I love. I didn't know it as a youth, but I feel it constantly. And it's by John Shedd. And it goes, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what ships were made for.
Yeah, it's worthless in a harbor.
Yeah, it's worthless. It's beautiful to look at, but it does not
Yeah.
do anything. And I relate that also in the TED Talk to a rocket, like a rocket on the in Cape Canaveral. Looks beautiful. It's on the stand. But it's doing nothing. It was
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's a great analogy.
isn't that
I'm
great?
gonna
It's like,
borrow that one. That's a good
yeah,
one.
yeah, but it's not made for that. It's made to go to space. And so I think if sharing this with anyone watching is, if you're born creative, what are you going to do? Are you going to hide it? Are you going to hold on to it? Or are you going to go out? Because talking about courage to be creative is you have to go out and put yourself out there. Every time you do a painting, Jeff, like you're putting yourself out there, like
Oh
you're
yeah.
taking a risk and you're wearing it on your sleeve. Just like a musician with a song is, people could be excited. People could be like, I really don't care. Like, or they say it's terrible, but you're still putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to South America, really focused on I'm going to spend this time not trying to be who I am right now. What can I be? And you have to be careful when you wish, pray, look for things like that because it might not come how you want it.
Mm-hmm.
The way it came for me was my oil paintings got confiscated. What I couldn't carry them all, so they get confiscated. I was in Chile. Chile has a big ocean on one side, has the Andes on the other side. It is maybe, from my understanding, a little difficult to get goods in there. So they have massive tariffs, or they have tariffs. They have problems if you just ship something because they want to keep their own business alive. Otherwise, they'd have no business the way it works. They're not really, they're kind of an island the way they're
Mm-hmm.
separated from the world. So they confiscate my oils, and oils are expensive. My easel, everything I sent down
Wait,
cost
when you
money.
say your oils, do you mean your paints or your
My paints,
paintings?
yeah, my paints, all
Oh,
my
okay.
paints, everything I need to paint. I was in a remote place on the edge of Patagonia, like farther south than Cape Town, South Africa. We're talking
Mm-hmm.
way down there, and so I'm shipping brushes, shipping everything I need to paint because you can't. There is no store I could go down to say, oh, I think I'll
Right.
go buy whatever, and they confiscate it. So after 3 months, and I'm fighting and fighting to try to get my stuff down there, I ask a friend, say, please, would you buy everything over again for me and ship it down? I can't believe I'm down here and I can't
For
paint.
3 months you sat there and
3 months. 3 months. But there is a part. I'm not sitting idle. So, but
okay.
first I'm going to finish the part of that. three
Okay.
months, then the oil paintings, the oil stuff, the exact. And oh, by the way, they sent it USPS instead of whatever we sent, DHL or however we sent it, because it goes through customs easier.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 months, almost to the day, at my front door, I have all my oil paint shows up from the previous shipping, and all my oil paint from the other.
No way.
Double. I was like, I was so frustrated instead of happy. So my point during that time was I did bring gouache. Gouache is so portable, and I could bring it on the plane. And so the whole time I was painting in gouache, bitter, not happy, but bitter because I was painting. I was not reinventing myself in the way that I thought I was going to be reinventing myself with oil. Instead, I was able in those months to paint only in gouache in many sketch pads in a way that I've never painted before. And I think it
Whoa.
changed the way that I painted because my feeling on gouache is I can beat an oil painting into submission, right?
Mm-hmm.
A certain amount. But gouache, like it has its opinion, and I have my opinion, and we have to meet somewhere in the middle. It doesn't always agree with me. It doesn't always share my opinion. Like I have to kind of accept what the medium of gouache will give me and
Mm-hmm.
really help me grow abstractly. So
Wow. Do you think it was meant to be?
I think in some ways, like a lot of things, like my back, yes, and this, yes, but during it, it's so hard to accept that maybe it's meant to be. Maybe it certainly could be. I was hoping for a change, and I really don't think I would have fully found that change with oil painting because I was comfortable enough. I think I would have just kept going back to it. So,
Wow.
um, all
That's a
right, fast
crazy
forward.
story, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fast forward, getting through the me show as quick as possible. Painting in oil, painting in gouache, doing gallery shows and museum shows. And after the show I met you at, Brian Taylor had told me, "Hey, there's a film. I always wanted to be in film." He said, "There's a show about a film conference down in Southern California, and would you like to fly out with me next morning?" So we have that museum show. The very next morning, we fly out. Had no idea that would change my whole life.
Really?
Got to know a lot of people in the film business who loved their work, massive fans of them. And I think the crazy thing now with social media is we know each other's work. Like there was a time
Hmm.
in the film business and fine art, even all fine artists might not know each other's work unless you showed in a gallery in your town. So got to know them. I started doing workshops like up at Pixar and things they would ask me to do. Like there was a time I think people thought I was in the film business and I wasn't in the film business. I remember even my first job, I went into my first meeting and someone was asking like, okay, so I looked you up, I've been seeing you in the film business for years and I looked you up trying to see all your films. I was like, you're not going to find any. This is my first film. But for a while, I think people thought I was working in it because who I was working with. And then the biggest break was working with the team from Avatar. Um, there,
What? You were
yeah,
involved with that?
no, I wasn't involved. They wanted to learn the fine art side of painting outside landscapes, and had the great opportunity with Brian Taylor. So Brian Taylor and I, and then the full team of Avatar, and showed them what we knew from which I would say it was like dinosaurs teaching spacemen, right? Like, here's what we know as I know as being a dinosaur, caveman, and here's what you know about being a space. I was blown away of what they could do, like just over and over. And they were excited to learn what we do because a lot of art schools aren't even getting outside anymore. They're not teaching traditional skills. And these guys, I mean, not that they're that young that they didn't have that opportunity, but we learned from each other. And I was so hooked on it. I don't know if you ever heard me mention this, but one thing I talked about is I actually stopped calling myself a painter. I
Really?
started, yeah, I started calling myself a shape maker.
A
Not like,
shape maker.
yeah, not the shape maker or anything. It's not like my title, but a shape maker because it changed how I started looking at myself as an artist because the more I studied art, like what did I care about? What did I love? Like when I look at your artwork or other people that I admire like you, is what do I love about it? And it's not the paint. They could be painting in any medium. It's all shape distribution. So I
Hmm.
get so excited about shape distribution. And when I go into a museum, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the thing of like someone can paint a field of flowers. A field of flowers is pretty, but it's not going to be a beautiful painting if there's no shape, there's no designs, there's no value pattern.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, if that's what's most exciting to me, I have to stop calling myself a painter. I really don't care about being a painter. I care about being a shape maker. Am I giving a shape distribution? And I mean, so I went into my studio no longer as a painter, as a scientist. I was like, okay, how can I study how shape distribution works in a way that's interesting to me? And this ties back is gouache helped me do that because gouache is such a flat medium, at least the way I paint it. And so it's
Yeah.
very difficult for me to get form. It kind of flattens it to a bunch of puzzle pieces. And then working digitally, learning from them, I just I put a couple of years in where I would work all day, fine art, come home, kids, put them to bed, and then start working digitally because I was so hooked because it was such an interesting medium to create shapes that I've never been able to make. Fast
Wait, wait, wait,
forward.
wait, wait, wait. Create shapes that you've never been able to make? What do you mean
Yeah,
by that?
I think digitally you're able to create it's what's the best way?
I mean, a
I
square is a
think
square, whether it's digital or paint,
yes. Yeah,
right?
it's not I'm not saying I was able to create like a new kind of polygon or something.
Right.
Brian Taylor, speaking of his good friend, I mentioned him a couple
Yeah,
times.
he's great.
I remember when he saw Guardians of the Galaxy. Have you seen the movie Guardians of the
Mm-hmm.
Galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
And he called me right after. He said, you have to see this movie. I think creativity has been unleashed. I thought that was a really interesting
Hmm.
word. Like it was now other things have done it, but at that time it was so creative. Not only the storyline, but visually was so darn creative and beautiful. It, I think it's more, I should say, it's not designing new shapes. It's this creativity unleashed. You can get to final choices in a way, just like gouache. Gouache was a step for me, oil to get to different shapes and different designs, different way to organize shapes that Now digital was that on steroids. It was like times a million. The way you can paint opens up ways of working that I never have been able to. I never, let me add to it. There's a few different ways I can say it. One is it yeah, it just gives more opportunities and the speed that you can work. When I worked in oil, I would have to do a study, before I did a big painting. I do a small study or do a bunch of small studies, and then I do next size, and then I kind of get bigger. I go paint plein air. But if I, plein air, if anyone's not, I'm sure it's just being paint outside. We just
Right.
charge for our paintings if we say plein air. So I get my $10 royalty
Yeah.
check. It just means location painting. But when I go outside, okay, it takes me 2, maybe 3 hours to paint oil. Gouache is quick, it's like a half hour, 40 minutes. But I'm limited on the time it takes me to create. And so if I can paint, let's say I can paint 100 paintings a year. I don't know the number, I've never figured out. But if I can paint 100 paintings a year traditionally, digitally, I can paint maybe 600. So I feel like I'm going to be 6 times better just from experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that
Kind
just
of-
because of all the sliders and whatnot? Like you can just
yeah.
sort of change things globally, really simply, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think so too. I think also brushes, when you're working digitally, your choice of brushes is like 5 billion. And my choice of brushes are, Hog, filbert, flat, right? Like it's so
Right.
limited. I have this limited amount of brushes where I now can lay paint down in a million different ways, which then try to translate it to traditional, which is hard because it doesn't always. So yeah, there's a myriad of different things, but I would say in the process of doing it, and I would say in the quantity that you can do it.
Wow. So is
So
that what you do most now is digital?
yeah, so I do mostly digital because I've been working more film. I haven't done, this is sad to tell you, I haven't done an oil painting in years. I've done a ton of gouache, but mostly
Hmm.
digital. So yeah, then came into the film business and then been working film. Just now have a couple big commissions in oil, so I'm getting back into going to do my first big oil paintings.
Do you
But
miss it?
I okay. Lay it all out. Let me see if you relate to any of this, Jeff. So
Okay.
it's not just the
Well,
me
the
show.
reason I asked is because when you were in art school, when you were introduced to oil painting, you realized that that's who you are. Like, I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly how you put it, but
yeah.
that's
That
your
was kind of
thing, right? And now you're back on your original plan
yeah,
of film. And I just wondered how you feel about leaving that thing that you discovered.
right. So I had told you and mentioned that I grew up playing sports.
Yeah.
Uh, Fine art. Talking about another podcast. Remember that you gave was with David Dibble, and you were
Yeah.
discussing something
I feel like you
about.
two have a lot in common.
Yeah, we're great friends. We've worked on some films together.
Oh, no
Uh,
kidding.
yeah, a great guy, great guy.
Hmm.
And him and Brian are spectacular. And you, I mean, just insane painters. So David was mentioning on the podcast something about sharing with friends,
Yeah.
right? Like you do some painting or something, you share it with friends. He's one of the people I share with, and vice versa, and Brian, etc. And maybe if you'll ever accept it, I'll start sending stuff to you, get
Heck yeah.
critique.
If we can go back and forth, heck yeah, man.
Yeah, I love it. It really helps. And one thing with fine art is it's great to be, that really helps because it's just you against the world.
Yeah.
But I grew up playing sports. And so I love the team aspect
Mm.
that it does. It takes a bit of, you have to, I think to have some success, you have to take a lot of ego out of it because you have to say, hey, I'm creating for the greater good. Right. And I like that. Like from the teamwork is, hey, can we make something better together with like however many minds in our group than by ourselves? I really enjoy that. With film, you just never know though the end product of the entire film. Like you could put and I know a lot of people like that. They put 3, 5 years into a film doesn't get made, or the film is not really well received. And so all their artwork just kind of
Oh,
disappears.
that'd be so depressing.
So yeah, could you imagine 5 years of artwork and maybe you can't even show it to the public because they have all the rights. So that to me is the tricky part. But I think I enjoy that piece.
The
Now here's
teamwork piece.
the teamwork piece. I love painting outside. I live for it. I can't believe every time I do it, I can't believe I get to do it because you get to go study. I think it's similar when you paint figure from life as well. Like you
Mm-hmm.
get to study creation life in a way that very few get to do it. That
Mm-hmm.
most people who study, who get to you go out and you see a beautiful mountain range or you see the coast and you look at it and you almost do like your postcard Europe tour of like, there's the Eiffel Tower, there's the Notre Dame,
Mm-hmm.
there's Big Ben, and you walk by and you never experience the world. You don't ever internalize it.
Right.
And as a painter, artist, you get to internalize it. I'm out there for 3 hours looking at the coast and I come in and I see the coast. I hear the coast. I feel like I've really brought it inside of me. And I think that's the same with a person. Like when you paint it, you feel like you intimately know them in a way that you could never know them because you have studied them. Maybe in some ways they've never even studied themselves, right?
Yeah.
You're getting the subtle nuance of, oh my gosh, look at the top of your, whatever, the area right below your nose above your lip. That's cerulean blue. I can't believe it. That's so much cerulean blue. I can't. And you get super excited. You know
It's like, do I
about
got a
that?
blue booger?
Yeah, exactly. No, you start looking at the color relationships and you get
Yeah.
excited. You know them intimately. They probably don't even notice that. They look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm skin color.
Right.
So I love that. This is a long answer to your question. One thing I can't stand, I don't know if you can relate, maybe you can't. I am never good enough as I want to be. And that
Yeah.
struggle as a fine artist is so hard it is such a hard battle.
Oh yeah, of course I relate. I feel like I talk about this on every podcast. You might just be listening to the ones where I haven't said it because that's like,
I haven't heard it yet.
oh my gosh, I relate. Yeah. I mean, I'm my own worst critic.
Yeah. So the process isn't always as enjoyable. Like it's something I constantly keep trying to tell myself is I need to enjoy that process more because and that's one thing gouache helps with because I know it has its opinion. I can't get it there. And so there's a point where it doesn't hold to the paper. Like I said, I'm 30 minutes in and, or 30, 40, and I'm like, I'm done. The paper can't hold it. It's just wrecking it. And then speaking of which, I'll take it back a little bit. When I went to South America, I didn't show anyone my gouache paintings for like maybe 2 years because I hated
Really?
them. Oh, I thought they
Really?
were terrible. And I started showing him and I started getting some response, but I didn't have a good experience with it. I was like, these are
How'd
bad.
you stay motivated for 3 months if you didn't like what you were producing?
I couldn't be in another place. I'll take the Gauguin. If you or Jeff, you were Gauguin, you got to Tahiti
Mm-hmm.
and all they said was you have a charcoal stick and, palm leaves, you might have said, I need to capture something. That creativity, you still need to create.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
still need to create. But yeah. So back to that worst enemy, I am. And for some reason, gouache and film work doesn't affect me as much. But because I think I can beat my oil paintings into submission, they end up being exactly what I deserve, which is beating them into submission. They rarely get to where I want. My hit ratio, for anyone watching thinking that I have a hit ratio of 100%, I do not. I'm not even close. Like if I have a 50-50, I'm feeling good about my landscape paintings. Like I do have a high miss ratio. I think because partially I'm constantly experimenting. I'm trying new things. I'm not painting the same scene over and over. So.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting. How happy were you with your paintings in that Pioneer show at the museum, the LDS Church Museum?
Oh, that's, oh, Jeff. Oh
Because
man,
I
how
thought
much?
they were extraordinary paintings.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I'll do the super short version.
Yeah. I think I
The
know the answer already. You didn't like them very much.
no, I loved him. I
Oh,
actually loved
good,
him.
good. Okay, good.
The curator, I think we all ended up with like close to 20 paintings each.
Mm-hmm. It was you and Josh
Yeah.
Clare and Brian
Josh
Mark
Clare,
Taylor,
Brian
right?
Taylor. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is hard. I'm like trying not to talk about it, but I'll just spill it. Three three weeks before, I think it was 3 weeks. It might have been less. It might have been 2 weeks. Whatever it was insane. So I think I ended up with 19 paintings of what you would have seen that show.
Not including your gouache.
Yeah, not including gouache. Those are
Okay.
all the big oil. They were pretty large size
Yeah.
oils for like we're talking 4 feet, 5 feet.
Yeah.
Uh, and we'll say 2.5 weeks. I can't remember the exact time.
Okay.
The curator cut all my paintings but three. No, maybe more than that, maybe seven. Cut all my paintings but seven.
What? No.
All those paintings were created in that 3 week period.
Wait. I'm confused.
No, it's because it's an impossible story, but it is true
Wait, you had a whole body of work, and
that I
then
created.
3 weeks before they cut all but seven, and you had to paint a bunch more in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I had to paint all those. The ones you saw were almost all of those large paintings were created in 3 weeks.
What? What was wrong with the other ones in their mind?
I liked them, but it drove me to another place. I
No,
painted.
why did they not like them, is what I'm saying. Did they give
Yeah,
you a reason?
they just said they didn't work. Yeah, they didn't really give a reason. So
Dude, that's brutal. Are
it
you
was
glad it happened?
heartbreaking. Now I am because of what happened, but it was heartbreaking. I couldn't paint the day they told me I couldn't paint the whole next day. I was so depressed because I
Yeah,
said
that would be rough.
we had worked on that show for what, 2 years? I had probably, even though I'd only put in like 20 paintings, I had painted probably 300 paintings for that show, small size, middle, on location, everything. So I was totally prepped. Like I had knowledge. It wasn't like I was going from nothing before. I had a lot of other stuff I could try to work from. But at the moment, I thought I would never be able to paint. I thought I'd get maybe two more paintings. I painted round the clock.
That's
Don't stop.
insane. So you
Yeah.
put in 2 years of work and
Yeah.
then
And
ended
all
up
that
hanging 3 weeks of work in the show.
in the show, what you saw.
That's unbelievable. How did you not lose your mind?
I did lose my mind. I was depressed. When they cut them all, I was like, yeah, this is it. I put 2 years into something, and my two colleagues are going to have 20 paintings, and I'm going to have six.
They didn't do it to them?
They probably cut one or two each.
Oh, dude, that is harsh.
It was painful.
Oh,
It was painful. One of them
no.
I still love. Like there's one that I did that I just love. It was actually I don't know if you remember, there's a painting with birds that go vertical.
Oh my gosh. Check this out. Yeah, I was literally just pulling this up.
Oh, no way.
Is it this one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, wait,
So
this
that
was in
fun.
the show, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in the show. So here's the story behind it.
Okay.
What was supposed to represent was all the people who passed coming across on the Pioneer Trail. And so the idea was the land, the trees being dormant because winter was supposed to represent death and lack of life of the hardship. And you can see like the sun, that's not supposed to be the moon. It's supposed to be the sun setting in this. It's kind of the end of life here.
Mm-hmm.
But all these were geese that I'd seen in Iowa, but the geese were supposed to represent the souls ascending to heaven. So if you see, they kind of get more faded and faded as they go up into the atmosphere. This was so fun to paint. I love the rhythm and the pattern of trying to hit these geese.
Oh yeah. I remember just falling in love with this painting.
Thank you.
It was
And
so beautiful.
my original idea was actually dandelions. I had a landscape
Dandelions.
of all dandelions. And the way
You mean to make the same statement or this?
same statement, it was all dandelions and they cut it. And so I had the concept in my head and I was like, I'm not going to lose that concept. I'm just going to paint it, in a different manner. And so I did this, and I remember I did like one super quick oil painting and, maybe like 4 by 8. And I was like, that's it. Time
Four
to go
by
straight
eight
to paint.
inches or feet?
Yeah, 4 by 8 inches was
Oh.
because this was bigger. This was a bigger version. And
Mm-hmm.
I did 4 by 8 and I kind of got the colors down. I said, okay, that's it. But yeah, so that talks about something that got cut. The Standyline piece that I loved. I still love this piece. Got cut. The
Is
concept.
that on your website anywhere? The dandelion
No,
one?
I've never shown it anywhere. No.
Really? So
Yeah.
weird. Okay, so I got to ask you, when I saw the show,
hmm
one of the things I noticed about yours, now keep in mind, I've interviewed Josh, Claire, and Brian Taylor. I freaking love those two guys, and I love everything they paint. They're amazing. So this isn't a critique of them, but it is something I want to highlight that's different about you that I was really impressed with. Is they're pretty direct painters. I mean, they paint in layers a little bit, but you were piling on the paint. Like,
Yeah.
and you're telling me you did that with 2/3 of those paintings in 3 weeks. You made more indirect paintings than your colleagues in just 3 weeks.
Yeah, I using drying agents and anything I could to
Really?
try to get into them. Yeah, because I
Holy
had to work so
moly.
fast.
That's
Yeah,
impressive.
it was
Yeah,
a
that was one of the things there's another one that I really loved that you did, and this was chunky. Like, if I remember
yeah.
right, you
That
piled on the
was
paint. Your website is
and that
slow as
one.
dirt, by the way.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's why I think some PDF. Sorry.
Holy
That
cow.
that one I did before. So that one was
Okay.
built because it was built up so much. So
Okay. Yeah,
that
that
one I
was so
definitely
chunky.
piled
I
the paint
loved
on
it.
that. Yeah, that was a fun painting. Actually we saw that location. It's in Wyoming, and perfect daylight day. It was sunny, gorgeous. We were there at about 12 noon, and then just wanted to paint like, okay, yeah, but that's not the excitement in this. It was a lot of these all had a lot of meaning underneath. Like
Mm-hmm.
that one was a prayer for shelter.
It just
And
barely came up.
yeah, sorry about that. And but anyway, the concept there was, okay, where there's a lightning storm coming, a prayer for shelter. So meaning the storms of
Yeah.
your life are coming, where do you take shelter? There is no shelter, right? Except the rock, which is, what that would represent. So
Yeah, look at
yeah,
that
that is chunky.
chunkiness.
I
Oh,
forgot
it
how
was
chunky
so
that was.
great. I love all that, all
Well,
those
thank you.
layers.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was studying your paintings like crazy at that show, and just like, man,
Oh,
look at
that's
all
so
that
nice of you,
paint.
Jeff. I remember when you came up to me and I was like, yeah, Jeff HEIN came up to me. Like, I
What?
loved
I
your
didn't even think you knew who I was.
No, for sure.
Oh, that's funny. I had no
And then,
idea.
yeah, no, I definitely knew your work. And then, like you said, when you talked about the gouache, I was like, truly guilt comes over me constantly.
Good.
I'm like,
You
someone
hang
of
on to
Jeff's
that feeling until I
caliber.
get one.
Yes, until I send you one. Totally.
Oh man.
Oh,
All right, let me get back home here. I
yeah.
kind of lost my train of thought. All right,
Yeah.
so 3 weeks, but then I think it was Brian who said that the church bought all of his paintings. Did they buy your paintings too?
No, my paintings were all bought by a private collector.
Or maybe that's what
And
Brian said.
yeah, and it was wonderful. That's a great story that I've already done enough with this show,
Just
but
give me the short. Just give me the short of that story. I want to hear it, if you don't mind.
just a super fast. I won't get into all details, but it was purchased the last day of the show. A lot of people had wanted to buy paintings, and I didn't have one collector.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted the show to stay together. So I told every collector that wanted to buy him separately, great, the day the show goes down, you have that's your painting. But until the show goes down, I'm going to still hold out if anyone's buy the collection. And not monetary reasons. It was the same selling it separate. I just want to keep it, at least knowing that I was a steward, handing it off to the next person complete. They can do whatever they want, but I knew the next person had is a complete collection.
Yeah.
And I had a truck going up to pick up all the artwork at the museum. They were in transit, and it was the last day, so they were going to pick them all up in the morning. And that afternoon, someone purchased it all, and I was so grateful for that.
A big chunk of change.
Yeah, they're an attorney, and they actually designed their offices around the paintings. So I've been to visit them.
No way.
Oh yeah, so it's all designed just for all the paintings. They're gorgeous.
Where are these offices?
Salt Lake City.
Is it possible for someone like myself to see them in the offices, or is it private?
I'm sure you could. I'd rather not share here on the
Yeah, let's
podcast
talk
in case they
after. I
don't,
might
but I'll
even
talk
know the
after.
lawyer.
Yeah.
I might even know
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'd be happy to share with you
Yeah, let
and
me know.
I could get you in to see them. But yeah, I wouldn't want to share to the
No, of
masses. So
course not.
they
That would
go from
not be fair
liking
to
me
that
to
client.
hating me. So
Okay,
anyway,
so man, all right. So then what happened after the show? What was next? That was kind of your last big hurrah before you got in the
yeah. So
movies?
then I got into the film business. So after that, well, I was still doing paintings for galleries, etc. And after that, moved into film, which I sent you if you want to show or
Yeah,
not the
let's look at that.
PDFs of
So when you say in film, you're concept artist, I would assume.
concept artist and production designer.
What
Yeah, I
does that
think.
mean? Production designer.
Gosh.
Forgive me, I'm ignorant.
So no, that's okay. I was before too. First, I'll share. Yeah, these are gouache if you want, and then I'll.
Freaking love these. I'll take any of them, by the way.
Yeah, you got it. So, oh, if you go back one up, if you don't mind, to
Yeah,
that.
this one's one of my favorites.
I have always so that one. That's a great explanation. Gouache, if you look at it compared to the oils that we just saw, gouache has its opinion, right? I have my opinion, and gouache definitely has its opinion in this. And it helps. I love abstraction. Actually, it's
Yeah.
one of the things I love in your artwork, right? You're absolutely representational until you take all the pieces and you look at all the abstraction throughout your painting, Jeff, that makes it representational. That's really excites me in anyone's artwork.
Yeah, me
Right.
too.
You zoom in close in one of your paintings, Jeff, and like, wow, beautiful abstract, beautiful abstract, beautiful abstract. And the whole is like, oh, it makes a whole.
Thank you.
So on this it's really the abstracted pieces. Gouache helps force me to be even more abstracted because there's a limit of like when I paint oil, this is probably more what the beginning of an oil painting would look like for me. And then beat it and beat it and beat it. So it looks kind of trying to chase. And this is terrible because I'm really not, but I think there's the curse of the camera. And the curse of the camera is having this standard of trying to reach something like that. And I'm not, and I know you're not either, but there's something in that comparison that kind of comes in my inner that fights it. And so I try to get too much rendering is probably the best word.
Yeah, we
And
can't shake where we grew up and how we grew up.
Oh,
We're
totally.
surrounded by these, perfect images, you might say.
Exactly.
And then we have to think more abstract. That's kind of hard to separate those things.
It is. And gouache helped me with that because it forced me. So I couldn't, once I get this kind of layer down, like I'll put paint over paint, but like in the one lightning painting you saw, that was days and days of laying more paint on and just covering it and covering it. This, I can't do that. If I lay another 2, 3 layers, it falls apart.
What do you mean by that? It falls apart? Like literally falls apart, or just the painting starts to die?
Yeah, the paint can't hold, the paper eventually doesn't hold the gouache as well. And the way, as you know, oil works, when you work on dry, it drops it off. But, the whole funny thing about oil painting, such as simple physics, is wherever there's more paint, that's where the paint wants to leave. If there's more paint on your brush, it goes to the canvas. If there's more paint on the canvas, it goes to your brush. It doesn't know. It just wants to follow that path. Well, in gouache, it's not that thickness because it does get thicker in areas, but it just eventually is a damp medium on a wet medium and they just start to wreck each other.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or if you go down dry, it's all dry brush, which I do, but it will get so dry brushed that then it gets kind of distorted that way. That's what I would.
It doesn't look as good when it's all scumbly looking, right?
Totally. But so in moments like if I was doing an oil painting, if you see that blue moment down kind of at the bottom, yeah.
Like these here.
Any of those, exactly. I throw those into my oil painting, but I usually cover them up to a certain extent because I'm trying to create color harmony and try and create interest to bounce around. And, the boat's going blue or going red to orange. So as the orange, I'm trying to hit a complement and trying to mess around with stuff so I'll throw kind of reactionary, I'm not planning it, kind of reactionary color theory in, but then I'm usually covering a lot of it up because I'm then rendering whatever that stuff is on the ground, where a gouache painting doesn't allow me to render that out. So I'll put that note in and like, oh, all right, let's keep it how it is.
Yeah, that's remarkable. The thing about your level of abstraction, because there are others, like I'm going to have Mike Hernandez. Are you familiar with him?
Oh, close friend. One of his paintings behind me.
Oh,
So,
that beach or that ocean wave?
oh no, that's a photo.
Wait a minute,
Yeah,
let me
the beach. There's a small beach one. This small over this arm. Here we go. This arm.
yeah, that little one,
Yeah, this side.
Okay.
Sorry, it's
I'm
reversed
gonna
on your
put my
screen.
mouse on it right
There you
there.
go. Thank you. Yeah, that's Jesse Powell, another absolutely amazing artist, lives locally. And then the mountainscape at the top is, which by the shell, that's a Mike Hernandez.
This one over here.
No, that one's mine. So only painting of me.
I'm
Mine is
sorry. Oh, right
house.
here.
Yeah, that one's Mike's.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I have one of his too. I
Oh,
freaking love his work.
he's
But
magical.
but he's more he's a little more finished than you are,
Yeah,
at least in this case.
in that painting, I
In that
think.
painting, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I mean, there's so many things I love about Mike's work, but I mean, he's an absolutely insane designer. But his marbling blows me away. Like his marbling of paint where he doesn't fully mix it when he puts a brush stroke down, not everywhere, but certain areas. And that vibration of color and vibration of light is so magical. Like
it is.
he is yeah. And he was instrumental in my film career as well. He was at DreamWorks before. And
No
yeah,
kidding.
he's a super special guy. No,
Yeah, for those who
we've
don't
been
know,
close
is
for years.
what is his handle? Squash Squash?
Squat, squat.
Squash 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 Squash.
I never
I
know.
can't remember.
Something
Anyway,
like, yeah, it always makes me think
Squash
of
Squash?
hopscotch.
Yeah,
Anyway,
something like
look at
that.
Mike Hernandez. He's magical. Yeah, look up Jesse Powell. Look up Brian Taylor, David Dibble, of course, Jeff Hines' work.
I'll
Yeah,
have to
those
look up Jesse
people-
Powell because he's not on my list of people to call. I haven't heard of
so
him.
good. No, yeah, he's
Well,
magical.
what's amazing about yours here is, let's pull this back up. I have no freaking idea what any of this stuff is. And
Yeah.
yet somehow it feels atmospheric. I mean, it feels like I can step into the scene, and yet I don't know what any of it is. The only thing I can make out is the boat.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable. The
And
way you're able
Jeff,
to simplify.
thank you, Jeff. When I was traveling, that you started with that trip that when I traveled, I was looking to become this type of artist. And this is exactly what I was talking. I couldn't get there with oil because I was painting oil a certain way. I get there closer to oil now, but gouache helped me abstract because I love abstraction. And tell you the truth, I don't know what any of this stuff is either. I didn't even know when I was there what I was looking at, right? I live on the coast. I love, going in the ocean and stuff, but I'm not a boat guy. So when I was there, I don't know what the stuff was, but to me, what all that stuff was wow, what a cool lead in, right? As an artist, I was like, that is a really nice lead in from the bottom right. I can go in and get vertical on that boat and hopefully take the posts and things off the top of the boat and come back down to the right and get a circular composition, keep me in there. Like that's where I like to, when I'm talking about a shape maker, that's where I would like to live as a shape maker and I think it's true of all of us. I mean, when we look at our subject matter, it's always a launching pad, right? It's not our ending point. It's we're now, I'm something I say a lot, but I don't want to be a dictionary. I don't want to be an encyclopedia. I have no interest in that. I want to be a poet. Right. And so if I want to be a poet, how can I be poetic about the scene I'm seeing? And if I am going to, I'll take like photorealism. If I take a photo and I project it and then I paint it absolutely perfect, it gets in that funky, loses some life. It gets weird. Like it doesn't have that life in it or whatever. And it lacks some poetry. And I think a lot of the poetry comes, of course, from lyrical brushwork and things like that. But I think a lot of that poetry comes from the abstraction. Like when I look at I'm thinking of a portrait right now of yours. And I think the one, I can't remember if it's blonde or white hair. And there's all these golds and stuff in like how the light's hitting. And now I wish I could pull yours up as if I was only.
It might be cold. You might be thinking of that old lady painting with cold.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And it is so representational in her face. Man, you zoom into how your brushwork, the lyrical brushwork and the abstraction of where that light is hitting, it's amazing. So
no, I appreciate that. You know, it's funny you should bring
poetry.
that up because this painting that I unfortunately can't show you that I just finished. There's one of the figures is looking out at the audience, and She's a main figure because she's life size.
Oh,
And
wow.
I painted her. She was the first one of the first figures to paint, and it was probably, not done, but it looked finished probably 6 months ago. And
Okay.
then, but my students would always come in and be like, "Is her name's Michaela, the model? Is Michaela done? Is Michaela done? Is Michaela done?" My answer is always, "It's no, nothing is done until everything is done." Right?
Oh,
Because
well,
I'll
that's
always go
right.
back. I always leave the option of going back to anything. And sure enough, the last week of working on this painting, I went back into what looked like a finished portrait and painted it 2 more times
Oh my gosh.
because I wasn't set. It looked like Michaela. It looked real. It looked representational and naturalistic, but it didn't have that poetry, as you put it. The brushwork was just not beautiful. It was just not enough. You know what I mean? So I just
Yeah,
repainted it twice.
that's
It was very
incredible. And
frustrating because I couldn't hit it. I finally think
I'm
I got it, but
I'm sure you did. And that's awesome. Yeah, that poetry you're looking for. I also got to say back to courage. It takes so much courage. I think it takes courage to wipe out a landscape areas, but nothing like wiping out a portrait. Even though once you've done it, once you have that experience of that face, but that is, that's courageous when you do that to say, "Hey, I'm hitting a lot of this, but it's not hitting your standard for poetry." That's impressive, Jeff, when you do
yeah.
that.
Well, you haven't seen it yet.
Exactly.
So
Well, I'm
it
sure
might be
it's
a total
impressive.
bomb in your perspective.
Yeah. So yeah, we can just run through these
Yeah,
quick.
let's look at some more of these. Again, the abstraction. So this is probably a stupid question, but are you still squinting at this late stage in your career
Am I
to
still
in
what?
order squinting in order to really
Oh, yeah.
in order to see more abstractly and not get distracted by what the things are and just to think in terms
Yeah.
of shape?
I squint. I have an issue though. In art school, the teachers would joke at me. I squint in the wrong times. I squint at my painting too.
So
I
do
squint.
I.
Yeah, I squint at the painting, then I squint outside or what I'm looking at. But yeah, totally. And
Okay.
yeah, just like as these are just like you can see compared to my oil, they're just so abstracted. Like I just love. By the way, this is kind of funny. Everyone thinks it's an Asia trip. Any idea where this might be, Jeff? You ever seen
I
this
thought it
scene?
was in Asia too. Wait, let me
Yeah,
think here. Nope, I
there's
don't
a
know.
chance you've been there.
Really?
It Disney World
Oh, yeah.
on
Disney World
the
in Florida?
yeah, it's not it's
I
Animal
have
Kingdom.
been there.
Yeah, so there's this one section where you go by this boat area in the water, and it's got these. I'm like, I don't think I could be in Asia and see a more beautiful vignette. So
How about that? That's funny. Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
haven't
funny.
been there since I was 12 years old though. It's been a while. Oh
So
my
yeah,
gosh, that is so abstract.
yeah. So that's
Wow.
Africa. That was a market, and there's a woman in a green dress. I don't know if
Yeah,
you can
right here.
holding a basket. But yeah, I was just in a outdoor market area, all fresh fruit. Funny stories. It's a great experience when you're outside. I'm outside, and there was a guy across kind of behind me, and he had a red shirt on. And I didn't speak Spanish, but when eventually someone came who spoke English, I spoke terrible Spanish, a little bit, not enough to understand, but they were all laughing. I didn't know if they were laughing at me or what they were doing, but I'm like, I'm still going to finish this painting. And eventually someone came up and said, "Do you know what they're saying?" And I said, "No, I have no idea." And they said, "The lady keeps saying," whatever the guy's name was, "Jose, do you know that guy? There's no way he has enough red paint to paint Jose. He's so fat." And it was like they were totally ripping this guy behind me, but they all loved each other. So they were all joking, but I had no idea because I didn't understand. But those are great experiences. And then at the end of the day, there was a guy to the left of me that was selling huge blocks of cheese from his own farm and just gave me a big hunk of cheese. And I
No
have this
way.
all the time. I've been out painting fishermen, and the fishermen will be, making fun of me and like, "What are you doing here?" And at the end, they'll come up and give me a fish or whatever. There is something I do have to say. If you're going to paint landscape, be part of the world. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason to be out there. Is art is a universal language. I didn't speak Spanish. I've traveled, all over the world, all over Europe and South America and and Africa. And when you start painting, you start connecting with people. A super fast story. I was on the Navajo Nation in northern Arizona, the reservation for the Navajos, and wonderful people. And I was out painting, and this dad came up to me, and his kids were climbing all over me when I was painting. Now I could have
Really?
been a jerk and like, hey, I'm trying to paint. Instead, I'm like, I'm in your place, I'm your land. I'm just excited to paint your land as to meet you and be a part of your world. And so I was really nice with the kids and talking to them about painting and getting to know them. They were awesome people. And when they finished, he was a big dude, like 6'6", just giant guy. And he's like, hey, why don't you come over to our house at 4 o'clock? I'd love to show you, our ranch. And our Hogan is, if anyone doesn't know, so the Navajos are known for kind of a teepee. They are known for a Hogan. That's their religious area or their traditional type home. And I had read a lot about the Navajos before I went up, so I knew how to walk in. You never walk in, turn to your right. You always turn to your left.
Mm.
There's certain things you do when you walk into a Hogan. So I knew some basic etiquette. But when I showed up, I sat down. They were at a bench outside, all the kids, his wife, his brother, and him. And they sit down by the way, that has nothing to do with art, but
No, this is good stuff.
Stories about living is they set down a big plate of venison, deer that they had shot, and a gigantic chili pepper, like 8-inch chili pepper, huge.
Really?
And I'm sitting there and nobody's getting food, and you're raised like you don't eat. I'm not going to just dig in. I'm sitting there. It's like 10 minutes. No one said, they're just kind of talking.
Oh, awkward.
Eventually the mom leans over and says, we're not eating. And I said, oh, why? And then she shared with me the tradition of the Navajos was that someone would in tradition would probably be walking 30 miles, 20 miles just to visit you. So you never walked into their home, or I call them Navas. They call themselves Dene. The Dene, I should call them by their own name. It's always funny when we call them something that they don't call themselves.
Yeah.
So when a Dene comes to their home, the first thing you do is a gesture of kindness and love is you serve them food. You don't serve yourself.
To eat by themselves.
Eat by themselves. Say, I know you must have walked a long way. And I just drove there, right? It wasn't a big deal. But they served me that. And man, it was the hottest pepper I've ever eaten. So I'm the only one eating, and of course they served it to me, so I'm going to finish it. But I thought I was going to melt. It was so hot, but it was great. The food was great and they were kind.
I would have died.
Yeah, totally.
The reason I handle hot.
No, I like hot, but it was too much. Long story, if I share with anyone is don't be separate from the world. Be a part of the world. I think it will affect your paintings and affect who you are as an artist. I know I've kind of had a lot on the Me Show talking about it, but I think there's a big difference. There are painters and there are artists. There are musicians and there are artists. There are people who can write a book and there are people who are artists. Artist is way higher, and that's what I aspire to. And I think if you're going to do this, you should aspire to be an artist, not a painter. There is a certain level anyone can get in draftsmanship or musicianship or anything. It's at what point are you going to experience the world and then have an opinion on the world? That's what I talk about being a poet, is experience what this farmer's market is and then have an opinion of it. If I didn't want just an opinion, I could just take a picture and come home. But I was trying to give my opinion, and gouache was giving its opinion, as I mentioned, but my opinion of it. And I know that's a standard I don't always reach, but I'm always reaching to be an artist.
Is it just me, or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting. Yeah. Are you familiar with Wayne Thiebaud? He passed
Yeah,
a few
yeah,
years ago.
absolutely. I just saw one of his works in a museum just last week.
Well, I was hugely inspired by him.
Yeah.
People usually are like, you must, with my family portraits, so you must be inspired by Norman Rockwell. I probably was subconsciously, didn't know it. I thought I was inspired by Wayne Thiebaud. That's the one I was looking at. And I just freaking was obsessed with him in college. And I had the good fortune of him coming to the Springville Museum here in Utah when I was in my 20s. And I was starstruck. I mean, how many times you get to meet an artist that's in history books before he's dead, right?
Totally.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
amazing.
I mean, he's so huge. And one of the things he said, he gave this presentation at the museum. And one of these things he said that stuck with me is that he doesn't see himself as an artist and that only history can decide whether or not he's an artist. And this is him in his 90s. He's already in history books. He's like one of the founders of the pop art movement.
Yeah.
I mean, and he was standing up there with all this wisdom and experience and life behind him. And he said, I don't know if I'm an artist. That's best for history to decide.
Wow.
And that's really stuck with me. So it's funny because I hate calling myself an artist ever since hearing that, because it just comes off like pretentious to me. Not when other people do it, but when I do it. And so I always call myself a painter. And I can't tell you how many times people have asked me to paint their house.
Yeah. I have a fence you can work on. Exactly.
So it's always this whole game. Like, I'm a painter. Oh, great. So what houses are you painting? I'm like, well, I mean, like an artist painter, like.
Yeah. Then it gets confusing.
You have
But
to say it.
You might have noticed when I was even saying, I said, aspire to be an artist.
Right.
And
I know. Yeah. That's why
in front of it, because same thing. It's like, I don't think I've thought of it like Wayne Thiebaud, but it is like, that is something that I'm aspiring to, but I can't really say I am or not because I'm aspiring to it. And it's so lofty. Like it's probably what Wayne was trying to say too. It's such a lofty thing that it almost is like saying, I know this isn't quite, but like, I'm the best. Like, I'm the best. I'm an artist. I've hit that pinnacle. So I can't, like, I'm aspiring to be an artist. Yeah, that's interesting.
Another thing was when Prince changed his name to the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah.
And I remember being so affected by that. Like, I will never call myself an artist. Like, and apparently that was some contractual thing. I don't know the whole story behind it. But the point is, I didn't know that at the time. And I was like, come on, But yeah, and the thing about art is, people like you and I, we basically came out of the womb with the need to create, as you described. And yet we're doing garbage. Like, from 2 years old, we're starting to pick up a pencil. I was laying on my belly in front of Woody Woodpecker cartoons, trying to draw Woody Woodpecker and various things. And, and you evolve as you go and as you get older. And now I'm doing what I'm doing. At what point are you an artist? It's such a long linear road. There's no way any one of us can really define the point when you go from a 2-year-old trying to copy Woody Woodpecker to an adult who's selling in galleries and has shows and whatever. At what point did you go from someone who's aspiring to be an artist to being an artist? To me, I don't think anyone can decide that for themselves. I only think history will decide.
No, but you have to constantly be aspiring to it.
You totally do. Yeah. It's a long, hard pursuit.
Totally. And but back to Wayne Thiebaud. Yeah, he was an early influence for me as well. I remember seeing his work and like, what, is he painting that with frosting? Like, it's
my gosh, it's so
such
great.
Juicy paint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Interesting. And when you see, I tell you the truth, I'm not even sure I could paint a Wayne Thiebaud the way he paints. I don't know how he applies the way he applies.
He was a sign painter. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. No,
so they have this way, sign painters back in his generation, everything was done by hand, and they have a way of getting the painting to flow so they can get a lot done in a quick amount of time. I mean, these are big old signs. So he took that skill of being able to make these long flowing marks and applied it to fine art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sure came off great. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's an artist, Brian Taylor introduced me to. I have no idea the name, so you should talk to Brian or I'll get back to you with it, who actually was a contemporary and a friend of Wayne Thiebaud's, but he painted landscapes.
Really?
So it's a Wayne Thiebaud-ish feeling for a landscape. Remember he showed me that
Well,
years
Wayne
ago.
Thiebaud did landscapes at the end of his
No, I
life.
know he did as well, but
Oh,
this guy only focused. I lived kind of Central Valley, California,
oh, I'm
Sacramento
gonna
area.
have to check on that.
Yeah, I'll look it up. So
Okay.
he had, it's not quite Wayne Thiebaud, but it's in the vein. It's interesting to be able to see more work in that vein.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look through some more of your
Yeah, we'll just
stuff
go
here.
fast. Yep.
Yeah.
So it
Again,
was
another gorgeous one, dude. Okay, so I want to be good at gouache, and I haven't given it. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult because for the reasons you described, but for me, it's mostly because I freaking hate how you don't get the value that you originally mixed. It just sinks in and it gets too dark or gets too light. It drives me up a wall. Do you have techniques for overcoming that problem with gouache?
I wish I did. I don't. All I can
Hmm.
say is I'm just a extremely direct, quick painter. Like this was probably a half hour. Like I'm
Okay.
just laying it in. The other thing I think with my gouache, you talk about Wayne Thiebaud with the way he applies. I apply it like I was painting with oil. So I don't paint it like it's a water medium. I'm just loading up more and more paint. And and I'm really, I think it's part of who I am and who I've always, I guess who I've always wanted to be was I love to draw, and I've always wanted to draw with a paintbrush. That has been like my goal. The day that a paintbrush was no longer a brush, it was a drawing tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking that way, I can look at this in the way I'm putting in the light shapes or trying to put like the snow or putting in the shadows. I'm just drawing that. I'm looking at the scene and then drawing it the best I can and then leaving it, right? Not messing with it. Like any of those shadow shapes were put in once. I think I can see one spot where I put maybe a color on top of it. And then the white, that white is a color because I can see on the back mountain, I can see where it goes white of the paper on the
White,
far back.
yeah, the way you made the cloud part of the paper is pretty brilliant.
Yeah, actually that's paint I can see. And the only reason I know if you go
No,
down
is
with
it really?
yeah, if you go down with the arrow, there's a little bit of white. Do you see that spot of white right
Right
there?
here?
So that's paper. So what I would have done is I
Oh,
would
but
have,
it's just a glaze, or not a glaze, but just a
oh yeah,
wash, though.
super light. Yeah, totally. No, I
No,
do.
I'm talking about like a chunk. Like you would think the instinctual thing to do for, maybe an amateur, even an advanced artist would be paint the sky and then with white paint come in and paint the clouds. But you did a wash and then you brought the sky color into the cloud.
Yes, and I think it's because sometimes I try to design with shadow shapes and sometimes I try to design with light shapes. And so this, because there was snow, I was
Yeah.
trying to use that as a design element. So I can't remember thinking this, but seeing that it's happening, I'm sure it was on my mind. I'm sure when you talk about that wash, I did that mountain snow and the cloud at the exact same time. That was just a big fat stroke.
Yeah.
And then I carved it in. But then when I painted the mountain, that shadow shape of the mountain, I made sure it didn't connect.
Yeah,
So
that's
the light
insane.
of the snow goes up. So it unifies the painting design wise. Talk about shape making. Otherwise, it would have kind of cut it off. Yeah,
This
you
is,
can
I can't, for some reason, I can't move this over. Is this,
I don't know why.
but I think we
That's
can
too
see it
close,
well
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
So this is crazy. Yeah, so you got to wash, but then to spell out this entire back mountain, bam, splash of a gray purple, splash of a gray
Yeah.
purple, splash of gray purple, few gray blue highlights, and boom, you're done. Mountain.
Yeah, you can see why it takes a half hour. Like you can count my brush strokes
It's
there. I don't know, maybe
crazy.
20 brush strokes or whatever to try to suggest that.
Yeah, that's wild how simple it is, and yet it reads remarkably naturalistic.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, see,
That's
I just don't understand how you manage these values. I know you say you just do it. Oh gosh, because you had to reserve your darks for the foreground or it wouldn't have worked.
right. And
Right?
yeah, and I don't know how I worked on this one. I'm guessing it's so funny, probably same with you. You do so many paintings that
Yeah.
I know I did it, but the process of it, I could have told you the day after, but
Well, how would you do it today?
I would put probably I threw in all the white first for fun. Like looking at this, I would have thought, hey, let's
The
just have fun
white
and not
first?
yeah, throw in all the white. Let's take
Wait
a
a minute, but it's
off.
white paper.
Yeah, but it would have dropped it into a, as you can see what the cloud is, a lay like a number 2. If you're going on a value scale to 10,
Oh, so you
10 being the
glazed, or
darkest.
so you did a wash first, though.
But not of the whole painting, because I can see there's other white. I probably would have just kind of thrown in areas where I wanted cloud and snow.
Okay.
That's maybe how I would have started. Just for like, I'm seeing like how I would have had fun with this. And that's what I'm trying to do with gouache. Like, okay, how can I
I would
interestingly?
think you would have done the shadow shapes first, but you didn't.
No,
You
I
don't think
don't
so?
think I did. There's reasons that I don't think. And for one, if you look at the snow shape on the left, here's one of the giveaways. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest snow shape on the front, yeah, that one. Look at the purple shadow on the top or on the right side, on the right, just a little to the right of where. Yeah, do you see there's a tail and it drags into the snow?
Yeah.
That's a mistake. It shouldn't be there, but that makes me think I did the shadows after.
Crazy.
So then I would have done probably snow, then I would have done maybe shadows of the mountain, then the light side of the mountain, and then the trees is my guess. But I can't tell if I carved into the trees. If I did, if I
Yeah, you're
carved,
carving into the snow up here too.
yeah. So yeah, I would have put the snow first for fun. I do
What
that.
in the heck? That seems so backwards.
Yeah, and I do it on oil too. You can get away with it a lot more in gouache, but
Yeah,
I
look at
will.
that. You're carving in here too. This light, this dark shape
Yeah,
is right on top.
yeah. So I,
What?
yeah, and don't think for anyone watching that I always start with my lights. I don't do that, but I really try to have fun. Like
You know what though?
that's,
If you're just a shape painter, they're
yeah,
just
shape
shapes. It
maker
doesn't
doesn't
matter what
matter.
order it is, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. It's just shapes. And so
Yeah.
what were exciting me on that one?
Excuse me, shape maker. Shape
Yeah,
maker, not
yeah,
shape painter.
yeah, shape maker, either one. So yeah,
Wow.
same thing.
Another
with
really
super
simple
direct,
one.
super direct on that one.
Yeah, is
And
this in Utah? Where is
no,
it?
this is in the Sierras.
Oh.
Yeah. This is
Oh
here.
gosh, that's so pretty. I love green water in the ocean.
Yeah, and we have gorgeous water here. So it's all a sanctuary. So it's like tropical type water.
Where are you again? You're in Southern
I'm
California?
in, no, I'm in, it's central. So I'm in
Central.
Carmel, Monterey.
Okay.
You have to come out, Jeff. Come out
Oh
and paint
man,
with.
I'd love to. I go to Southern a lot, but I've never, well, I've only been to Central to see the elephant seals at one point. There
Oh
was,
yeah, on a Nuevo. So we're just
yeah.
we're just south
You
of Monterey.
are? Okay.
And then I think there's only one more, but that's,
God,
yeah,
these are gorgeous, man. I love your signature too, by the way.
oh, thank you.
And I
It
got to
used
be
to
honest, I want to be completely transparent here. Typically, when people do like sort of a graphic kind of signature rather than just signing their name,
Mhm.
I don't usually love it, you know, but for some reason yours really works.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's cool.
Nice.
And it's
It
not,
changed. It used to be more calligraphic. It was just my last name
yeah,
until I became a shape maker. It's the point I became a shape maker, I changed my signature.
no
You're the first
joke.
person I've ever told that to. But
Really?
yeah, looking at my
You
old
heard it
painting,
here,
it'd be
folks.
my last name. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
So,
All right. So I want to ask you about what we started talking about, this idea of design. I'm not exactly sure where we left off, but I have a question.
okay.
So if as a shape maker, you know, you had talked about how it doesn't matter what, I mean, correct me if I misinterpreted or, you know, what
Okay.
you said, but it doesn't matter what you're painting necessarily to you or what you're seeing being portrayed to you. What really matters is those shapes. So you could paint a table full of lemons and it could be completely ugly, or you could rearrange them at better shapes and it's a beautiful painting, right? So it's really about arranging shapes and creating a beautiful design. Am I
Yes.
correct? That's your sentiment?
Mhm.
So, and you said you spent a lot of time studying shape. That's the thing that I was really curious, or I'm really curious about. How do you study shape? And this is something I've thought about a lot because there's a good people who have good sense of composition just keep doing it. and doing it and doing it. And they're always different. And it seems as though there are infinite solutions to good design
Right.
and
I think
infinite
that's,
solutions to bad design.
yes.
So how in the world do you keep in the good design camp? Like what is it about good design that can be so incredibly vast in its potential and yet so fragile to where you could totally blow it with any painting?
Yeah, that's huge. Hard to answer in some way. So I'll chip away at it, but
Okay.
man, I can get in some deep water there on difficulty. A couple of things I have here. I'll do a little pitch. I have a class on schoolism. If anyone wants to take it, it's a landscape class.
Okay.
I also one at Tucson Art Academy. Both those one. Tucson Art Academy is strictly oil painting more. Schoolism is more everything designing top to bottom.
Okay.
And
Would they
um,
find that on your website?
I think it's there, but I think it's on my Instagram at John Burton Art. There's links on there too. Yeah, I think, does it say? School. There you
Schoolism.com.
go.
Yeah. So just go to your Instagram and it comes up. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, great. These are great schools. So if you'll go
Okay.
back to painting,
All right.
um,
To your paintings? You want me to go back to
yeah,
your
any of
paintings?
them. Any of them is fine.
Let's,
Yeah, we do the boat one
yeah, the
because you
boat's a good
like
one.
that one. So first, there's a hierarchy of shape. And oh, first you ask, how did I study it? By studying others, right? You can see
Right.
it in nature, like studying nature of here's an interesting one is tropical fish. There's one tropical fish that's kind of black, yellow, white stripe
Yeah.
that I can picture, and it's pretty even. But if you ever study tropical fish, there's a proportion. That's a key word. A proportion. The reason they're so beautiful is they'll be like all gray and then this fluorescent green piece of the head and this bright purple fin, or it could be the other. It could be purple, then this subtle little gray, but they're not equal. There's a few fish that I can picture equal, but like the Hawaiian, like the huma huma nuku nuku apa'a, which is their state fish, is like mostly gray, but this beautiful white stripe, beautiful yellow, and then touches of orange. But it's this proportion that is so amazing. So I think it's all proportion, shape hierarchy, and proportion. So you can study it in nature. The reason I bring up fish, you can study it in nature, but you can also, are you going to look up that fish?
Yeah. Well, I just want to look up tropical fish because this is
Yeah,
really
tropical fish.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So maybe we could look at a few.
Yeah, let's see their proportion and see if you go images. Okay. Yeah, so that the black yellow one is one that's like even, but here like
Yeah.
that one doesn't, I mean, it's still
Look
beautiful.
at that one. This is a good example of what you're
Yeah,
talking
that's a
about with
great
asymmetry.
example,
Yeah.
right? The asymmetry of it. So it's got like, it's so pretty and it does something. Talk about the poetry or the vibration or something. It does something to our heart, to our soul, I think, when you see these fish. That's why people
It's
travel around the world
remarkable.
to see them. And I don't think it's only their bright colors, right?
No. Look
Because
at
they are
these.
bright colored, but yeah, it's proportion in what it has and where it has it. And that's just one example. You can see it you can look at a leaf or you can look at a field of flowers. Yeah, and these look really saturated, so they're a little much on my eye, but they're still beautiful. Like I think they're oversaturating even the scene
Right.
of fish so it's a little, oh yeah, look, go to the one in the, yeah, that one. That's a better example where it's just like
Jeez.
that proportion. Look how beautiful. And then in my painting of the boat, where I mentioned I put blue in other places to harmonize. Now look at that fish, if you don't mind.
Oh, did I lose it? Oh, hold on a sec. Let's find it. There it is.
Oh, there it is. If you look at the fish, look at the green in the tail and then the green in the fins. A little orange yellow in the front, a little orange yellow in the back, but a touch of yellow, but mostly blue. So
And then that splash of white, just
yeah, flash of
totally,
white.
yeah,
Totally.
on
So
its own.
there's a dominant and then there's submissive or subversive and more submissive. I'm thinking that constantly when I'm painting. And in my class, I actually talk about a diva. I've always hated the term focal point. I like, in
Really?
fact, about painting, I'll joke with people because I'm like focal point, schmocal point. But the reason I don't like focal point is it doesn't read for me as good in my mind as much as the word diva. So if you think of when you're on stage and there's a diva, that diva doesn't want to be upstaged. That diva likes the limelight. The diva wants to be looked at and doesn't want any of the background dancers, doesn't want anyone competing with their spotlight. So when I think diva, I'm like, okay, what's my diva? I want to make sure everything bows to the diva in my painting. So that's maybe my first idea. Second, then I'll think hierarchy of shape. And with that hierarchy shape is size of shape. Big shape, medium shape, small shape. I can't all like this in this painting. I've got the big shape of the sky. I have the big shape of the boat. I have a big shape of the foreground land, just the lighter part. And then I have medium shapes like the fin or the hull, not the hull, but well, I can't think of the name, whatever the part that sticks down underneath the boat. One is why can't I think?
Yeah, I
Obviously,
can't help you.
the hull, but
The
there's a
finny
name.
thing?
The finny thing. Thank you. That the technical term. So
Yeah.
those would be kind of medium shapes, but then the shapes in the foreground are little shapes. And so what I'm trying to do is create a speed in which that you move around my painting, that you
Hmm.
have you kind of moving like if you think about it as music, then you're thinking like the foreground is like maybe I'm terrible at music, but it's like a dun, 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 like a staccato maybe is what it's called. But then maybe the main melody is going to be the boat. So it's just moving
Hmm.
like it's going to bring you or into the chorus, it's going to bring you in. So now you're here and you're kind of on the boat, but then as you move around, like those two poles maybe send you off, then these small shapes are going to get your attention and bring you back down around and try to keep you in. It's actually a way I just say, okay, how long can I try to keep you here? Which is a really interesting idea, Jeff, because I
Hmm.
told myself once and I went to a museum and I was so disappointed with myself because I thought I took forever when I looked at paintings. And if I don't have a sketch pad with me, I was averaging like 3 seconds of painting. And I thought I was looking at them forever. And when I really took time, I was like, how in the world is this my passion? And I can walk by this so quickly. Now, total masterpiece, different story. Like I'll sit.
Yeah, that's the thing though. It's like my wife's into chicken wings. She loves
Yeah.
chicken wings. But because she loves chicken wings, she'll only eat the best chicken wings.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is with museums. It's like when you're an artist, you kind of, or not just museums, but galleries in general, you know what you want to see,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. You
And so
shoot
those are the
by.
ones you spend all the time on. Everything else, you just sort of walk by.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. And so with
Yeah.
this, like, I'm not trying to get so heady to think that I'm trying to keep you there for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm saying, can I hit the 3 second mark? Right? Because with the bad chicken wings, you don't even spend 3 seconds.
Right.
It's a millisecond, it's a glance. So, like, can I hold you for 3 seconds? If I can do that, I feel like I'm successful.
Yeah. That's
So,
good
yeah, there you go.
insight.
So, yeah, studying old paintings is one, studying nature, and then thinking hierarchy, proportion, speed in which I want you to move through the painting. And in the end, talking about a poet is it poetry? Is it music? Is it lyrical? And I feel like if I'm not doing that, same as like when you talked about painting that portrait, if I'm not doing that, then no one ever sees the painting. It gets rubbed out, gets destroyed, it goes in the garbage. Because if it doesn't catch that, then I feel like I haven't held up my end of the bargain. Like I think you felt when you did your portrait. Like
Hmm.
probably 100 people would look at your painting and 100 people would have thought that looks great, but it didn't hit that mark of poetry that you were looking for.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's really good advice. So, my guess is that you're not looking, as you're studying these things, you're not looking for formulas. You're looking for patterns as you're studying other artists, nature, whatever. You're looking for patterns
Yes.
rather than mimicking a good, so-called good design.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing I talked about my TED Talk. In my TED Talk, I talk about that and saying, I don't want to be the second best anybody. I don't want to be the second best Jeff Hein. I don't want to be the second best David Dibble, Brian Taylor, Joaquin Sorolla. Even though the second best,
We're all the
Joaquin.
second best to Joaquin Sorolla. Sorry, man.
Exactly. But totally. I'm about the 1 millionth best to
Yeah.
Joaquin Sorolla.
Yeah. No, we're collectively second as the rest of the
Yeah,
planet. Yeah.
totally. So, but I don't want to be like, I don't want to be them ever. I just want to be the best
Yeah.
me. So I think you internalize the best you can. And then the hope is in the end, people can't find your inspiration. They don't know because we're all kind of copying and aping everyone. So a certain extent, you have to learn from them.
Right.
In the end, I think if you have enough influences, you don't know the influence. That's my hope. Is you'd look at my work, you look at this like, oh, I really don't, that kind of looks like him. I don't know any. And when I look at your work, Jeff, it doesn't pop up like, yeah, Jeff looks like, it's like, oh, that's Jeff HEIN's work. I can spot your work. Man, I could spot it anywhere. I think you could do, you wouldn't even have to be painting a figure. I bet you do a landscape. Like I can tell, wait, Jeff's doing landscapes? Like, I think there's a certain way, like a signature that you have or artists will have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, when you talk about formula, what I talked about in my TED talk is you could climb a mountain. And if somebody is putting all the pulleys in and putting the rope in for you and they're climbing above you and you're climbing up, you're always going to be right behind them. You never climb that
Mm.
mountain. You just follow them up. Or I can take the switchbacks and I can climb it myself because I'm not a mountain climber. I can take the switchbacks. It might take me longer. And I might not even be able to climb as high, but I'm still going to get to my height. Right. And I think some of that comes with trust of like, and this is something I share with everyone is like, for myself, I constantly have to tell myself, and for everyone else is I'm good enough. You're good enough. Like you put the work in, and then remember, you're coming to this. The day I painted that boat, I'm coming with all my experiences in life, and I am going to do it different than somebody else, and trusting that there's value in that. And that's hard to do, but you have to do it.
I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple. So how do you reconcile this potential contradiction in that you don't want to be the number two to anyone, you don't want to mimic anyone, you want to just be yourself and have your own signature, but you're also a team player.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, those two things seem almost contradictory. So what's the relationship that those
when I
have
work on a film?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Or
never
no,
thought of
even when you're just calling Brian Taylor or David Dibble for advice on a painting, right? Like, so you want to be yourself, and yet you also think that more minds can help elevate your work.
Oh,
So
I see. Yeah.
how do you strike that balance between being independent and also being a team player?
The first thing that popped in my head, this is off the cuff, but the first thing that popped in my head was I will have a mirror in my studio,
Mm-hmm.
right? I always want to make sure I'm looking good while I paint. No, I'm just kidding.
My mirror
But
is
a mirror,
huge.
yeah, a mirror to see so you can see your painting
Yeah.
back. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a way to read your painting. I think Brian and David and Jesse and others, Larry Moore is another one. They are my mirror. So you
Okay.
can get so caught in the weeds. I think, like, let's say you're going to write a screenplay or going to write a novel. I think it's still your novel if you have an editor. It's still your novel if somebody else reads it and gives you advice. I would say it's in that world is I'm bringing it to, I don't bring them a 4-line drawing sketch and say, what do I do now? Right.
Right.
Develop it as far as I possibly can. And then we'll send a picture over and say, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? And we joke when we see each other's work because it's always the same problems. We just can't see them ourselves. Like, oh, did you put that tree in the middle? I put the tree in the middle or the horizon. Like, it's such dumb, stupid stuff. But as you know, the painting is, we're solving a million problems. And then one escapes us because we solve so many correct. And then you show it to someone that
It's so true.
Yeah, you just missed that. And you're like, oh, that's easy. Like I can change. So I think it's it's kind of the last 10%, last 5% of the painting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have similar, how do you work with that way, Jeff?
I'm not a very good team player, to be honest
Mm,
with you. And I want to be better at it. But I have this stubborn, it's a weakness of mine. I have a stubborn part of my personality. It's like, I need to solve this thing. It's not because I don't think I can be helped. I know I can be helped. That's why I do the podcast. Cause I'm like, I'm trying to soak up John Burton right now, like soak up your powers. But when it comes to a particular painting,
right.
it's hard for me it's hard for me to get advice because I want to solve it. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
you mentioned that on another podcast. Your words were
Yeah.
someone came into your studio once and they gave you a suggestion and you were like, wait, I missed that opportunity to solve that. I
Yes.
was like,
That's,
oh my
that's
gosh, that
exactly.
resonated so deeply with me. There was a key
Yeah.
to that. You also said they said it unsolicited. And I used to have a studio that was
That
more
is a
public.
big difference.
Yeah.
Because at some
And I
point
used
I'm
to have,
just throwing the towel. It's like, I
yeah,
can't do it. I just can't do it. And then maybe I'm ready for advice. Although I don't have a group like you do, but I
yeah.
could see getting advice solicited, but unsolicited, I don't like it.
I don't either. I
Mm.
related to that not in the way of someone saying you should change this. In my studio that used to be very public, people would come in and say, I like it and I don't like it. And they were cruising through town, getting cotton candy and, cruising around and had no knowledge of art. Not really
Mm-hmm.
candy. I was trying to, more show an image of like, they didn't care. They didn't care in the world. They were just kind of walking in, giving their quick opinion and walking out. And it would totally affect me. Sometimes I'd just stop the painting right there, put it away and never paint it again. And they would say, like it, don't like it. And I was like, I don't want to hear anything because I'm still solving problems. I don't even know if I like it yet. So I do understand that.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's a point I would like to put out the best product I can. And if it means sharing, which, these guys could also tell you, and I don't know if this might be an issue with you, it might not be. So we can be a bit of a perfectionist. So, I mean, I think you have to be a good artist because it needs to drive you, but it can't paralyze you. That's the balance I always have is, can I be a perfectionist enough to drive me to be my best, but not a perfectionist too much that I'm paralyzed. I can't take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like I don't show my work early enough. Like
Yeah. I'm
I
guilty of that
will
too.
wait to show someone because no, I need to solve. And man, if we would have showed them a little bit earlier, all the solves would have been, I could have just jumped ahead. And then maybe,
Or you could have left it alone.
yeah,
You know, I am lucky to have students that are right now, all my students are very advanced. So I do sort of lean on them a little bit and not even so much. Sometimes I'll come right out and ask them, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? But other times it's just sort of feeling them out because we do have a rule at the studio, no unsolicited
yeah,
and no unsolicited comments one way or the other. I mean, you can compliment anytime you want, but no critiques unsolicited. That I don't even do it to them until they ask.
yeah, that's
And
good.
so they'll come in the studio and I'll just say, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? And just sort of try and get a feel for how they're responding to it. But one thing I found that they often save me from myself because
Yeah.
I might have taken something further that they somehow see magic in already. And I'm like, really? You think that's
Yeah.
good? And they're like, because I was going to do this, this, and this to it. No, just leave it alone,
Yeah.
And so
The,
sometimes, yeah, they really save me from overdoing it.
the two painters to make a masterpiece, one to paint it, one to stop the person.
Yeah, something like that.
And
Yeah.
also going, as you mentioned, that first popped in my head was, have you seen Soroya's paintings live? Because we were talking about Joaquin Soroya.
Painting live. No. Well,
I mean, not him painting, but I mean, have you ever been to a museum show? Not just in
oh
books.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're remarkable.
When I see his paintings, I constantly think they would have never left my studio. Like there's places that are so unfinished and they're so beautiful.
I know. How did he have the guts to do that? Well, you
Yes,
do too.
exactly.
But you do too.
No,
You're just like that. I don't
no,
get
he's
it.
like a million times more. No, these paintings are, like 10 feet wide and these areas are dripping paint and unfinished. And you look in a book and it looks so representational. And then you're there and like, there's no way I would have let this painting leave my studio. I would have thought, no, it's too messy or whatever. And by the way, I'm saying that, as you know, I mean, Joaquin Soroya he's my peak, right?
No, I'm with you 100%. I've thought the exact same thoughts. And I'll add to that. I've often thought, I can't just do this. It was too easy of a solution and I'm getting paid this much money.
Exactly.
Like it seems
Totally.
like I'm cheating the client.
Totally.
But even though it
Yeah.
looks better, it didn't feel ethical. It was too easy to do.
Yeah, you got to run with that and just say, grateful. I'll take the win this time because I know that
I know.
but that's hard. I do the same.
Yeah.
Or all the way to the edge. And I don't mean leave white canvas, but he'll have a wash or whatever and just kind of take care of what he needs to take care of. The rest is kind of filled in just with your eye. And I'm like, oh man, I would render it to the last detail of leaf on the corner when I don't need to.
Well, what's remarkable about him is he didn't have another version of him to look at.
Yeah, that's true. That it's the Beatles or whoever, they're the first time around with it.
How did he get the guts to do it? We have him to look at. But where did he get the guts? I mean, he was looking at Velasquez, for crying out loud. And like, how did he have the guts to be like, oh, I can just leave this dripping paint here and sell this painting and people will love it. I mean, I don't understand it.
That's super insight, Jeff, that you always have to think of artists in their time period and what they were influenced, but you're exactly right.
Yeah.
He's influenced by, El Greco and Velasquez and Roya and whoever it was we could see at the Prado. Yeah, that's amazing because he did push that envelope.
I
Partially,
know. It's remarkable. That's what made him genius, is just that he was able to do that when he had no one else to justify it. Because I'm always looking for justification. You know, would John Burton do this? Would Stephen Assail do this? Would Pete the Street do this? Peter Brown do this? Would so-and-so, you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm always trying to justify, whereas some great geniuses out there just do it. And they do it. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, that is, man, I think that's probably the best thing in this whole podcast today was anything you said or I said, that was the most important thing for anyone to hear. Is like, how can we be that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Courageous.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you do that? It's hard.
I don't know. Well, you sort of hit it with your gouacheing, and you either were blessed or lucky, whatever you want to call it. But I think that gouacheing had to have been meant to be, because you sort of had that epiphany on accident, which is wild.
Forced on me, yeah.
It was forced on you, yeah.
And with that case, it's so weird looking back because I had wished for it, wanted it, and it came. But how many things do you want? Like you and I want, okay, let's make our want right now. We want to have be courageous enough to paint that way. Whatever, not to maybe not like Soraya, but what is that version of we don't need to get the verification or the whatever we're looking for from the past to make it okay to do today.
Right.
Let's try it. But if the scary part is, how is it going to come? It didn't come.
I know. It's a mystery. It's definitely a mystery for everybody. Huh.
That's super insightful. Glad you said that. I got a lot out of that, Jeff. I'm going to take that to heart. How much can I do that? Because that is a battle.
Me too. Me too. I mean, that thought literally just came to me. So it's, gosh. Yeah. Because I hadn't thought about that with Soraya before.
Yeah. And we won't use the word artist, but I will use it. You won't. But if you are an artist, you should be that, right?
That's the thing. And that's why you can't define it. I mean, it's just like, or not that you can't define it, but you can't, because there is more potential than Soraya had, right? Soraya could have even been better. It's hard to imagine it, right?
Probably.
It's hard to imagine it, but there's no limit to your potential. And it's just, how do you know when you've hit it?
I think of like rock music. Like for some reason popped in my head, it was Van Halen. Like there wasn't a Van Halen, right? That's a common known band right now. And at the time there was no Van Halen before. He just that was what they did. And if we are, and the reason I use that because it's more contemporary.
Yeah.
They are a quote unquote artist and they're pushing it and saying, this is who we are. How do I think part of it, you have to get the confidence in your own skills, right? And if you and I have put this many years into draftsmanship, at what point are we going to trust that next part of the process?
Yeah. Right? Okay, I'm going to be a little redundant here. So those who listen to this are going to have to forgive me, but I just brought this up. I can't remember with which guest, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And since you brought up Van Halen, have you noticed that right up until like the maybe 1990, every generation was dramatically different, from clothing to music, everything, right? If you look at pictures of people in the 70s, when I was growing up, I'd look back at people, how they dressed in the 70s, and think they look like weirdos. And then by the time I move out and I'm married, I'm looking back at the 80s and thinking I was a weirdo. Pictures of me in the 80s. Now, like, you could look at pictures. I just saw a post about The Office, and someone had said, you look at The Office that was 20 years ago, you can't tell that it was 20 years ago. This is the first generation where we've gone a whole generation or more where nothing's really changed that much. And it's the first generation where parents are listening to the same kind of music as their kids. And because the music hasn't changed that much. And I think the same thing about art. And so is there a drippy paint left for us to discover, that the Sorolla discovered, the just letting it be kind of thing? Is there a thing like that even there for us anymore? Because it's hard to know if there's anything left.
The difference between, and you could usually separate a decade on clothing style, on music style, and you can't after
Not anymore.
It's like, you look back and look at everyone's clothes. 2000, you couldn't have hey, let's dress at 2005. The kids in high school couldn't have a dance and say, let's have a 2005 dance, and everyone will look different because everyone will look the same.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Wild. And
my son, who's 18, he makes fun of my music just because he's trying to be a difficult teenager.
Right.
Right. And so I was challenging him. We're driving in the car. He's like, Dad, I want to listen to my music. And I'm like, Cole, your music is the same as my music. So he pulls up some sort of like hip hop rap thing. And I listened to hip hop rap when I was in high school a little bit. And I pull up something I listened to 30 years ago. And I didn't tell him. And I said, well, what about this band? It's modern. It's contemporary. Do you like this one? He's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Dude, Cole, that's from high school. That's from my high school.
That's so interesting.
I totally nailed it. I totally tricked him on it. He had no idea. He's like, oh, yeah, this is cool, Dad. I'll listen to this because it's my style or my time. I'm like, dude, that's 30 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy. And, rattling in my head, you're also comment, can we do it as artists? I think we can. The fact that clothing hasn't changed or et cetera, it could change. It just really hasn't. I mean, I think it has, but it's subtler.
Yeah.
But we should be able as artists. We have, at least until AI takes over all of that.
Oh gosh, heaven forbid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a podcast I want to have one of these days, is a discussion about AI. We'll save that for another day. That would be an interesting topic.
Speaking of that, maybe we could just show a couple of my digital ones too.
Oh, yes. I did want to do that. I'm really glad you reminded me.
Show where people kind of what I did.
And I want to, before we close, I want to talk about what exactly you're doing in film now too. So wait, you didn't send me digital ones. So we just look at Instagram or?
No, I sent them on an email right after the other one. I sent 2 emails.
Oh, all right. Let me go off my screen here for a sec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be good just because.
Dude, this stuff is insane. Holy moly. Is this personal work or movie work?
Yeah, so none of these this is all personal. The film stuff I can't go right now. So. But it kind of shows like that shape making. It's just a different way of doing it, different level.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was.
Are you using reference for the figures and stuff? And
yeah, so I'll use reference, absolutely. And then I should include the sketch. So I did an initial sketch of that kind of mech spaceship thing in the background. And then the next one, you can see it's a lot more painterly.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Wow. Are polar bears really that big?
It was all trying to get,
that's not a critique. I'm wondering if this is purposely exaggerated.
They're pretty close, but I did exaggerate it for part of the story.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, this is a screenplay that I've actually been working on, an IP, which you'll see another one for it.
Yeah, that has really a screenplay. So it could end up being a movie?
I mean, if anyone ever picked it up, but yeah.
Oh, so it's a personal screenplay. Okay.
So yeah, you can just see it's like
Oh
just a
my
different way
gosh.
to attack. I think when you see my oil and then you see gouache and then you see these, I mean, I really tried to live in the ship in the harbor. I keep trying to leave the harbor and keep trying to create in different ways. And in the end, just like it's all shape. If I keep thinking shape, I think I land in the right place.
Dude, you have such a remarkable sense of atmosphere. That's
Thank
incredible.
you.
So these reflections, these reflections in the balls
Mhm.
that you've got,
Yeah.
is that just some sort of freehand interpretation, or are you using
Yeah, so I think well, it was a flat painting that I did, and then I bent it around. That's like with digital, you just get things differently.
that's
And
awesome.
then I did like it's an abstraction that then I bent that around the thing because it was supposed to be like a pearl. It was supposed to be like a temple made out of pearl-like material.
Mm-hmm. There's a great
So
example of another great example of how digital is just a whole nother animal.
yeah.
And
Oh,
then you can
totally.
just do a flat image and bend it around something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it took a long time to try to figure all that out. And then yeah. And we can
What
go.
in the heck? Dude, your imagination is insane.
That's one thing we didn't thank you, Jeff. We didn't talk about is when I started doing digital, I didn't become an artist because I wanted to paint mountains or people. I became because I wanted to draw submarines and spaceships. And so that is one thing kind of takes me back to my youth is can I trying to use my creativity and my knowledge now of being able to the craftsmanship of art and then going back to my imagination as a kid. I really do enjoy that part.
Yeah, you can tell. You look, you're having a blast.
Yeah, these are fun. And then the next one is the other. This one goes with the other polar bear one. That's why I like the size as he
Wow.
hides it. But if I look
Man,
at this one,
I can
oh,
see
go
why you
ahead.
get along so well with David Dibble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fun working on projects with him
He's
too.
I mean his stuff is different because he's prepping for, well, no, because he, like that Noah thing he did, the
Yeah.
Noah's
Those
Ark
are
series,
gorgeous.
those things were nuts.
How beautiful are those?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
these are
Talented.
same kind of quality, like incredible.
But yeah, if you look at this one, still going that same hierarchy, right? Of shape.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the dark background shape, that crashed spaceship in the distance. That's a big shape. And then the pieces inside, and now you're working little shape, or kind of the rescue mech in the foreground is a middle-sized shape going out to little. So it's always I'm still trying to do that shape hierarchy and that shape distribution, no matter what the subject.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's remarkable. So, how much do you use reference in things like this?
uh rocks, I had to use some reference. This is, yeah, I actually know on this one, I looked at a ton of crashed airplanes.
Okay, I was wondering because I don't think I could pull
Understand.
this off without looking at stuff.
Yeah, no, yeah, for crashed airplanes, I definitely did that foreground one. Yeah, definitely. So I had to look at it, kind of looked at hazmat suits, looked at crashed spaceships, stuff like that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yes, definitely looking at reference. And the ones of the snow scenes, I'm looking at snow reference and then
Yeah,
building from.
obviously you're not finding this image anywhere,
Yeah,
but you're
exactly.
piecing it together, Frankensteining it together.
Totally, totally. And
Yeah.
trying
Oh, is
to
that
get
the
it.
last one? So
Yeah,
tell me
that's
about what about the movie thing? What are you doing in the movie
so
industry right now?
the
Exactly.
last studio has been Skydance. If you're familiar with them,
Mm-mm.
you probably would know their films. They're Maverick, Top Gun,
Really?
Mission Impossible. Yeah, things. I didn't work on either of those. So
Well,
the
if you
film.
had worked on those, what would they need someone like you for?
So what I do is you mentioned before about production designer and concept artist.
Yeah.
I am kind of at the beginning of the film. Production designer goes throughout, but for paintings like this, you're also called a world builder. And so the director working with the script has a concept. Just here's a super quick rundown. If you're thinking Star Wars,
Yeah.
George Lucas was the director. George Lucas had the script, and it said Darth Vader, and it said Millennium Falcon, it had X-Wing, it said TIE Fighter, it said Tatooine, the planet. Those were words. Nothing was there. So then you get a
Mm,
team of artists that then have to create those worlds, design down to, like they call it design language. Why does Star Wars look different than Marvel or look different than Avatar? They all have different design languages. But once you're within it, like a Star Wars, you're designing the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing, Darth Vader, R2D2. There's a team of artists who are doing all of that. And so I would be part of that team.
that
And
sounds like so much fun.
it's so much fun. And so you're world building. So you're creating these places as if they exist, and I'm basing it on my experience of painting outside and shape distribution, et cetera, of how would light work. Of course, I've never been in a scene that looks like this one, but how would things work in this?
Right. So let's say your screenplay was bought and they're making a movie of it. You've already designed this world.
Yep.
So they would take this look and then they would build it digitally based
Yeah.
on
So
this
then the next
look that
step,
you've already
yeah,
established.
there'd probably be even more work done, but yeah, that eventually then this gets handed off to the next team, which might be the FX artists or the set builders or the cost. Like I don't do cost showing, I don't do anything like that. That's the next
You're
step.
always just 2D.
I'm 2D, and it's always blue sky, meaning it's always here's just a bunch of ideas. Let's throw it all out and see what works and
Okay.
what kind of resonates with the director.
What about copyright and stuff? If you do something for a major film, do you get to show it in your portfolio or do they own the rights?
So that it all depends if it's been released yet.
Oh,
So if
okay.
the film's released, then you can show it, and if the film's not released, you can't.
Mm,
So
man, that's great, dude. That sounds like so much fun. I don't you sometimes wish that we lived like 300 years and we could just do 3 or 4
yeah,
great careers?
there's just not enough time. That's why I
There's
keep leaving
not.
the harbor, because there's not enough time. I keep trying to do more and more, because I totally agree. There's too much when you're creative.
Yeah, there is so much. My wife and I always talk about this. She's like, no, I could do another 20 or 30 years. After that, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, God, I could live forever if I could just keep doing creative things.
Not enough time.
Not
And
enough.
speaking of which, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me and
Oh, are
even
you
reach
kidding?
out. And it was I have got so much more out of your few comments, because I apologize, I talk so much, but your few comments were life-changing today. Truly. I
Oh,
really
you're
appreciate
too
I am
kind.
the way
No,
I'm going to
man.
attack my next work, my next body of work from what you discussed in the time of how the generation hasn't changed and how we can have that confidence, right?
Yeah.
To even though no one before did it like us. So
Well, you're
that's
too kind, man. You're too kind. Well, no, I'm starstruck having you on the podcast. So this is all my pleasure. But I'm taking a lot of your time though. So we probably should wrap up. But let me ask you one final question that I always ask.
okay.
And that's if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring artist that you either wish you had or that you did have that really affected you positively, what would it be?
I'm going to use the word artist again. I know you don't like to use it, but the one thing, if you're an artist, especially I'm now thinking someone younger,
Mm-hmm.
one of the keys to being an artist is don't forget. The world will beat you up. The world will tell you you're not an artist. The world will give you 5 million reasons not to be an artist. It's not a real career. It's not this, it's not that. I liken it to the world can be harsh. It can be great. I mean, the world is great, but the conditions don't have to be perfect, is a better way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to bloom. That's a big thing I say a lot, is bloom, is like you still have to bloom no matter what. Whatever the conditions, if you're, I live in this area with these cypress trees, and they're beautiful. They're bent and go back and forth. People travel from around the world to come see our trees. The reason they look that way is because every storm that comes through breaks a branch, and then it grows another branch in a different direction, another one.
Mm.
And the hardships of the life of that tree has created beauty. So whatever hardship you're having, whatever difficulty you're having, still grow into that tree, still bloom. That's probably one of the biggest one, because no matter how good it's going, there's going to be a bunch of times you're going to question yourself. And I believe that the world needs artists. The world needs musicians, it needs poets, it needs writers, and it needs painters, among other arts. So you still have to bloom. That's probably number one.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, man. Number one, do you have more?
I was going to think if there was another. The only other one is
I'll take as much as I can get.
If you're young, this is one thing I tell a lot of youth. If you're younger, a lot of people are going to open the doors probably more likely than later. So don't be shy. You're 15, 16, 18, 20. Contact your favorite artist, favorite musician, your favorite anything. See if they'll talk to you.
That's good advice.
Open to talking to people, but I know I'm even more open when they're a 15-year-old and they're reaching out and they're like, hey, how can you help me? And then here's the last piece that goes along with this. If Jeff HEIN lets you possibly into his studio and lets you talk to him about art, bring your notebook and write down everything he says, because time is valuable.
Same with John Burton.
And he spent his lifetime getting these nuggets. So don't end and walk out and write down what you said, right? That's the piece, is make sure you internalize it, take it in. You're not in there just to just look around and then walk out and say, I did it. Really try to learn from it. And the only way you're going to do it is find importance to what's being said.
Yeah. You know what? Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
I would say, because I've had so many young people come into my studio, and I agree with you about young people, but I would add to that, don't be intimidated by artists.
Yeah, totally.
Because so many people come in here and are just scared out of their minds. You can tell they don't know what to say. They don't know how to act.
We're all art nerds, right?
We're all weirdos. It's just, all, you know what I mean? And it's like, but every now and then I'll get a person in here. Like I had a kid come in the other day with her mom, not the other day, a couple months ago with her mom. And dude, she was something else. She was just so excited to be here. Everywhere she looked, she's like, Jeff, what's that? She didn't even know me until that day, but she's just like, Jeff, what's that? Jeff, tell me about that. Jeff, what about that? Jeff, what about this? Oh my gosh, I love that painting. Tell me about that. Tell me about this. And I was just so impressed with this girl that she wasn't just holding onto her mom's leg and scared to say 2 words, and that she kept asking questions. I was happy to answer every last question because her enthusiasm was contagious.
Totally. That's awesome.
Anyway, that was great advice. And man, it was great to have you on and get to know you better.
And one more I'll do a little pitch for anyone watching. Keep an eye on my Instagram, because I am leaving the harbor again, and I'm going to do an announcement on Instagram probably next month. So.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Okay. We'll be watching.
Yeah, I did keep leaving. So.
Okay, man, now you got me in suspense.
Yeah. Well, right. Jeff, I hope to talk to you a lot more. It's just
let's do it. Let's do it. It was great to have you.
A lot more for you. Hey, how about we make a deal? If I ever do have a podcast, which I doubt I will, I would love to interview you. I'm going to go watch your first ones that you mentioned where you talk about you, because I didn't get enough of Jeff HEIN.
Perfect. No, what it is it was Andrew Tischler interviewed me, and he allowed me to put it on my podcast feed. So if you go down, it might be better just to look up Andrew Tischler's podcast. That way he gets the views. But he interviewed me, and he's a great interviewer. It's what's his podcast called? Andrew The Creative Endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Anyway, so I talked about myself on that one, obviously. But anyway, again, great to have you, man.
Tomorrow at work, I'm going to listen to that while I work.
Sounds good. All right, well, take care.
Okay. Awesome, Jeff. Take care, buddy.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.